King Zephyros sat on his massive crystal throne, looking down at the reports scattered across the golden table before him. The throne room was huge, with walls that sparkled like diamonds and a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Purple. Banners hung from the walls, each one showing the symbol of the Valteron Empire, a three-headed serpent wrapped around a star. The king was not pleased. His latest conquest had taken longer than expected, and now his advisors were bringing him news of another primitive world that needed to be dealt with. He drummed his long, clawed fingers on the armrest of his throne, making a clicking sound that echoed through the chamber. General Krex stepped forward, his heavy boots making loud sounds on the marble floor. The general was a veteran of 50. Conquests, his chest covered in medals and scars. He bowed low before speaking. "My lord, our scouts have finished studying the third planet in the system they call Sol. The species there calls themselves humans, and they live on a world they name Earth." King Zephyros looked up from his reports, his yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. "And what makes these humans so special that you waste my time with this news?" General Krex cleared his throat. "They are divided into many small groups, my lord. They fight each other constantly over resources and territory. Their technology is very basic. They still use chemical explosives and metal projectiles as weapons. Some of their kind have developed nuclear weapons, but these are crude and limited." The king laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Nuclear weapons? Those toys that barely scratch. The surface of a planet? What else do these pathetic creatures possess? They have no energy shields, my lord. No plasma weapons. No faster-than-light travel. They cannot even leave their own planet in meaningful numbers. Their largest ships can barely carry a handful of their kind to their own moon." King Zephyros stood up from his throne, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. He walked to the massive window that looked out over the capital city of Valtara Prime. Below, countless buildings stretched to the horizon, each one a testament to the power of his empire. Ships moved between the buildings like insects, carrying goods and people across the vast metropolis. "How many worlds have we conquered, General?" 437, my lord. "And how many of those worlds offered any real resistance?" "General." Krex thought for a moment. "Perhaps 10, my lord. And none for more than a few days." The king turned back to face his advisor. "These humans sound even weaker than the Zorathians, and they surrendered before we even fired a shot." He walked back to his throne, his long robes trailing behind him. "Why do you bring me such trivial news?" "Because, my lord, this world could serve as a perfect training ground for your son. Prince Theron has been asking for a chance to prove himself in battle. This conquest would be simple enough for a first command, but meaningful enough to give him experience." King Zephyros considered this. His youngest son had been complaining for months about being left out of military campaigns. The boy was eager to prove himself worthy of the throne, but the king had been reluctant to give him any real responsibility. A world full of primitive humans might be exactly what the prince needed. "Tell me more about their military capabilities," the king said, settling back into his throne. General Krex activated a holographic display that showed images of human weapons and vehicles. "They have ground vehicles that move on wheels or tracks. Their aircraft are powered by chemical combustion engines. Their warships float on water and fire metal projectiles over short distances." The king watched the display with growing amusement. "They fight on the surface of their world with such primitive tools?" "Yes, my lord. They have no space-based weapons platforms, no orbital defenses, no energy barriers protecting their cities. A single one of our cruisers could destroy their entire military in a matter of hours. Perfect." King Zephyros clapped his hands together. "Summon Prince Theron immediately. Tell him to prepare for his first conquest." Within an hour, Prince Theron arrived in the throne room. He was young for a Volteron, barely 300 years old, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone born to rule. His armor was polished to a mirror shine, and his weapons were the finest that Volteron technology could produce. "You called for me, father? I have a gift for you, my son. Your first conquest." The king gestured to the holographic display. "This world is called Earth, and it is inhabited by a species called humans. They are primitive, divided, and completely unprepared for our arrival." Prince Theron studied the images with growing excitement. "What forces will I command?" "The Third Royal Fleet, 500 ships, including the Dominion's Edge, as your flagship. More than enough to crush any resistance these humans might offer." The prince's eyes lit up. The Third Royal Fleet was one of the most powerful armadas in the Volteron military. Each ship was equipped with the latest weapons and shields, crewed by experienced warriors who had fought in dozens of campaigns. "When do we depart?" "As soon as the fleet is ready." "I want you to make an example of this world, Theron. Show the galaxy that the Volteron Empire is not to be trifled with. But remember, this is a learning experience. Study their tactics, such as they are. Learn how to command a fleet in battle. Most importantly, learn how to rule through strength." Prince Theron bowed deeply. "I will not disappoint you, father. See that you don't. Take your time with this. Conquest, there is no rush. Use it as an opportunity to train your officers and test new tactics. These humans are not going anywhere." As the prince left to prepare for his mission, King Zephyrus returned to his reports. He had already forgotten about the small blue world and its primitive inhabitants. In his mind, Earth was already conquered. The humans would surrender or die, and his son would return home victorious. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Lisa Martinez was working late at her laboratory. She had been studying radio signals from deep space for years, hoping to find evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth. Most nights, she found nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional pulsar, but tonight was different. Tonight, she was seeing patterns in the data that made her heart race. Structured signals, organized communications, multiple sources moving information toward the solar system. She called her colleague, Dr. Kevin Walsh, even though it was past midnight. "Kevin, you need to see this. I think we're about to have visitors." Dr. Walsh arrived at the laboratory within an hour, still wearing his pajamas under his lab coat. He looked at the data on Lisa's screens and felt his blood run cold. The signals were clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, and clearly heading toward Earth. "How long do we have?" he asked. Lisa checked her calculations again. "Based on their current speed and trajectory, I estimate 3 months. Maybe 4 if they slow down. We need to contact the government immediately. Already done. I sent the data to SETI headquarters and the Department of Defense. But Kevin, I don't think we're ready for this. Whatever's coming, it's big, and it's organized." Dr. Walsh nodded grimly. "Let's hope we're wrong about their intentions." But deep in his heart, he knew they weren't wrong. Someone was coming to Earth, and humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. 3 months later, the edge of the solar system suddenly filled with massive alien ships. Prince Theron stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, watching as his fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 500 warships spread out in a display of power that had terrified countless worlds before Earth. The flagship was enormous, stretching over 1 kilometer in length. Its hull was covered in weapons that could destroy entire cities with a single blast. Energy shields shimmered around each ship like soap bubbles, protecting them from any attack that primitive humans might attempt. "Status report," Prince Theron commanded. "All ships have arrived safely, my lord," replied Commander Vex, his second in command. "The fleet is in attack formation and ready for your orders." Prince Theron smiled as he looked at the small blue and green planet hanging in the darkness ahead of them. It looked so peaceful, so undefended. He could hardly believe that this tiny world would be his first conquest. Open a communication channel to the planet. Broadcast on all frequencies. Channel. Open, my lord. Prince Theron straightened his uniform and spoke in a voice filled with authority. People of Earth, I am Prince Theron of the Valteron Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 24 hours to surrender completely. All military forces must lay down their weapons. All governments must submit to Valteron rule. If you comply, your lives will be spared. If you resist, your cities will burn. The message was broadcast in dozens of human languages across the planet. Within minutes, emergency meetings were called in capitals around the world. Presidents, prime ministers, and military leaders gathered in secure locations, all asking the same question: what do we do now? President Jake Morrison sat in the Situation Room beneath the White House, surrounded by his top advisors. The room was filled with screens showing satellite images of the alien fleet. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever seen, sleek and deadly, hovering at the edge of their solar system like predators waiting to strike. Options? The president asked. General Patricia Stone, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, spoke first. From a conventional military standpoint, we don't have any good options. Our best weapons can't reach them at that distance, and even if they could, we have no idea how effective they would be against alien technology. Secretary of Defense Robert Kim nodded grimly. Our satellites are picking up energy readings from those ships that are off the charts. Each one appears to be more powerful than our entire nuclear arsenal. President Morrison was about to respond when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he had memorized but hoped he would never have to use. He answered immediately. Mr. President, this is Admiral Susan Blake. We need to meet immediately. There are things about the situation that you don't know. Admiral Blake, I thought you were retired. Officially, yes, sir. Unofficially, I've been preparing for this day for 75 years. I'm sending a helicopter to pick you up. Tell your security detail to stand down. Where we're going, they don't have clearance. 20 minutes later, President Morrison found himself in a military helicopter flying toward a mountain in Colorado he had never heard of. Admiral Blake sat across from him, a woman in her 90s, who somehow looked like she could still fight. A war single-handed. Admiral, I need answers. What's really going on here? Mr. President, in 1947, something did crash in Roswell, New Mexico, but it wasn't what people think. The ship belonged to a species called the HFY, and they were running from the same aliens that just arrived in our system. The helicopter landed at what looked like an ordinary mountain research station. But when they walked inside, President Morrison found himself in an elevator that descended for what felt like forever. When the doors finally opened, he stepped into a facility that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Welcome to the Terran Defense Initiative, Admiral Blake said. We've been waiting for this day since 1947. The facility was enormous, carved directly into the mountain. Technicians worked at computer stations that showed displays the president didn't recognize. In the distance, he could see what looked like aircraft, but their design was unlike anything he had ever seen. Dr. Ryan Cooper approached them, a man in his 60s with graying hair and intense eyes. Mr. President, I'm the chief scientist for the TDI. We need to bring you up to speed quickly. Dr. Cooper was 12 years old when his father started this project, Admiral Blake explained. He's been working on our defense systems his entire life. Dr. Cooper led them to a secure briefing room where classified documents covered every surface. The HFY survivors told us everything they knew about Valteron technology and tactics before they died. They warned us that the Valterans would eventually find Earth, and when they did, We needed to be ready. Ready how? The president asked. By appearing weaker than we actually are, Dr. Cooper replied. The Voltarans have conquered hundreds of worlds by overwhelming them with superior technology. They've never faced an enemy that was prepared for their specific weaknesses. Admiral Blake activated a holographic display that showed the alien fleet. Every Voltaran ship uses the same basic shield technology. It's incredibly effective against energy weapons and conventional projectiles. But it has one fatal flaw that they don't even know exists, which is their shields can't stop weapons that phase shift between dimensions. We've spent decades developing quantum resonance disruptors that can punch through their defenses like they're not even there. Dr. Cooper smiled grimly. We've also discovered that their command and control systems rely on neural implants that can be disrupted by a specific frequency. Jam that frequency, and their entire fleet loses coordination. The president looked around the room at the faces of men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. How many people know about this? A few thousand worldwide, Admiral. Blake replied. Scientists, military officers, and government officials from allied nations. Everyone with a need to know and the clearance to handle it. Why wasn't I told when I took office? Because the previous president decided that each administration should only be briefed if and when contact actually occurred. Too many people knowing the secret increased the risk of it being discovered by the aliens. Captain Amy Rodriguez entered the briefing room, wearing a flight suit that looked more advanced than anything the president had seen. She was young, maybe 30, with the confident bearing of someone who had trained for combat her entire life. Captain Rodriguez commands our first response squadron, Admiral Blake explained. She and her pilots have been training in simulators based on Kethver intelligence for the past 10 years. Mr. President, Captain Rodriguez said, my squadron is ready to launch. We have 48 fighters equipped with quantum phase weapons and gravity manipulation drives. The aliens think we're still using chemical rockets and metal bullets. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Dr. Cooper pulled up another display showing installations around the world. We've built quantum disruptor networks in every major population center, disguised as cell phone towers and power stations. When we activate them, the alien shields will fail completely. How long do we have? The president asked. Admiral Blake checked her watch. The alien prince gave us 24 hours to surrender. We're going to use every minute of that time to get our people in position. At exactly 2,400 hours tomorrow night, we're going to show these Voltarans what humans are really capable of. Meanwhile, high above the earth, Prince Theron paced the bridge of his flagship. The humans had not responded to his ultimatum, which was typical. Most species tried to negotiate or beg for mercy before finally surrendering. Any response from the planet? He asked. Nothing official, my lord, Commander Vex replied. We're picking up increased communication traffic, but it appears to be panic and confusion. Some of their governments are calling for evacuation of major cities. Prince Theron nodded. Fear is a useful tool. Have our long-range sensors detected any attempt to mobilize their military forces? No, my lord. Their aircraft remain grounded, and their naval vessels are returning to port. It appears they recognize the futility of resistance. Excellent. Tomorrow, we will begin with a demonstration. Destroy one of their major cities to show them we are serious. That should convince the rest to surrender quickly. But on the surface of Earth, in hidden bunkers and secret facilities around the world, thousands of humans were making final preparations for a battle that would determine the fate of their species. They were not panicking, and they were not surrendering. They were getting ready to fight back in ways the Volterans could never imagine. Dr. Lisa Martinez sat in a new command center, surrounded by equipment she had never seen before. Her discovery of the alien signals had led to her recruitment into the TDI and now she was part of humanity's last hope. "The frequency disruptor is ready," she reported to Admiral Blake. "Once we broadcast it, their command structure will collapse within minutes." "Good. Captain Rodriguez, are your pilots ready?" "Yes, ma'am. We're go for launch on your signal." Admiral Blake looked at the clock on the wall. In 18 hours, humanity would either win the greatest victory in its history or face extinction. But for the first time since the alien fleet had arrived, she allowed herself to smile. The Valtarans had no idea what they were. Prince Theron had grown tired of waiting. The 24-hour deadline had passed with no response from the humans, which meant it was time to show them the price of defiance. He stood on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, watching Earth turn. Slowly in the darkness of space, "Commander Vex, have all ships move into bombardment formation around the planet. We will begin with a gentle demonstration." "Yes, my lord." "Shall we target military installations first?" "No. These humans need to understand that resistance is futile. Target their space stations and satellites first. Show them we can destroy their primitive technology with ease." The Valtaran fleet spread out around Earth like a net of death. Each ship positioned itself for maximum tactical advantage, their weapons trained on the small blue world below. To Prince Theron, it looked like any other conquest. The humans would see their defenses destroyed, panic would spread, and within hours they would be begging for mercy. "All ships report ready, my lord. Begin the demonstration. Destroy all human presence in space." Plasma beams lanced out from dozens of Valtaran ships, striking satellites and space stations with pinpoint accuracy. The International Space Station exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Communication satellites went dark one by one. Within minutes, humanity appeared to have lost all of its space-based assets. "Excellent shooting," Prince Theron said with satisfaction. "Now the humans know. We are serious. Scan the planet for defensive responses." Commander Vex studied his instruments with a puzzled expression. "My lord, I'm getting strange readings from the planet's surface." "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures that don't match our intelligence reports. The power grid's in major. Cities are operating at efficiency levels that should be impossible with human technology." Prince Theron frowned. "Explain." "According to our scouts, humans use primitive electrical power systems. But these readings suggest they have access to much more advanced energy sources. Some of these installations are producing power levels comparable to our own fusion reactors. Impossible. Our intelligence clearly showed they are still burning fossil fuels and splitting atoms for energy." "That's what I thought too, my lord. But the sensors don't lie." Prince Theron considered this. News. Perhaps the humans had made some technological advances since their last scouting report. It didn't matter. Even if they had improved their energy systems, they still had no space fleet and no energy weapons. It changes nothing. Move the fleet into final attack position. We will destroy New York City as planned. The death of 8 million humans should convince the rest to surrender. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Admiral Blake watched the tactical display as the alien ships moved into position. Everything was going according to plan. The Valtarans were behaving exactly as the Kethfer intelligence had predicted they would. "They've taken the bait," she announced to the command center. "All ships are in bombardment formation, exactly where we want them." Dr. Cooper checked his instruments one final time. "Quantum disruptor network is fully charged and ready. All we need is your signal." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio from her hidden launch facility in Nevada. "Dragon Squadron is ready for immediate launch. Just give the word." "Dr. Martinez, is the frequency disruptor ready?" "Yes, ma'am. The moment we broadcast it, their command system will go down." Admiral Blake took a deep breath. 75 years of preparation had led to this moment. She thought about the Kethvar, survivors who had sacrificed their lives to give humanity this chance. She thought about all the scientists and engineers who had worked in secret for decades to build these weapons. Most of all, she thought about the billions of humans who had no idea their survival depended on the next few minutes. All units, this is Admiral Blake. Operation Liberation is now active. I repeat, Operation Liberation is now active. High above Earth, Prince Theron was about to give the order to fire when every alarm on his ship began screaming at once. The bridge was suddenly filled with flashing red lights and the sound of warning klaxons. What's happening? He shouted over the noise. My lord, we're detecting massive energy spikes all across the planet's surface. Before Commander Vex could explain. Further, the main view screen lit up with incoming objects. Dozens of small craft were rising from Earth's surface at impossible speeds, their acceleration rates far beyond anything in the Valteron intelligence reports. Human fighters, my lord. But they're moving faster than our sensors said was possible. How? Fast? They're pulling 15 Gs continuously, my lord. No biological creature should be able to survive that acceleration. Prince Theron watched in disbelief as the human fighters closed the distance to his fleet in a matter of minutes. According to every report he had read, humans were limited to chemical rockets and could barely reach their own moon. These craft were moving like Valteron interceptors. All ships raise shields and prepare for combat. He ordered, but even as he spoke, something else was happening that made his blood run cold. Every Valteron ship in the fleet was reporting the same thing. Their shields were flickering and failing. On the surface of Earth, Dr. Cooper activated the quantum disruptor network. Thousands of hidden installations that looked like ordinary cell towers and power stations suddenly began broadcasting energy on a frequency that Valteron shields could not block. Disruptor network is active, he reported. Enemy shields are down to 20% and falling. Captain Rodriguez felt the familiar weight of acceleration as her fighter launched from its underground silo. Around her, 47 other pilots were doing the same thing, their aircraft rising from hidden bases across the American Southwest. Dragon Squadron, this is Dragon Leader. Primary targets are the big ships. Remember your training. These weapons will punch right through their hulls once their shields are down. Lieutenant Danny Foster, Flying Dragon 2, checked his targeting systems. Dragon Leader, I've got a lock on that cruiser at 2 o'clock. Permission to engage? Granted, Dragon 2. Show them what humans can do. Danny's fighter fired its primary weapon, a quantum phase cannon that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The beam struck the Valteron cruiser's weakened shields and passed through them as if they were made of paper. The alien ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. First kill goes to Dragon 2, Captain Rodriguez announced. All squadrons. Weapons are free. Take them down. The space around Earth erupted into the most one-sided battle in galactic history. The Valteron fleet, designed to fight enemies with conventional weapons and tactics, found themselves helpless against human technology that operated on completely different principles. Prince Theron grabbed Commander Vex by the shoulder. How? Are they doing this? Their weapons are passing right through our shields. I don't know, my lord. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database. And their ships? How are they moving so fast? They appear to be using some form of gravity manipulation, my lord, but that's impossible. The intelligence reports clearly stated they don't have that technology. Dr. Martinez activated the frequency disruptor from her command post. The signal she broadcast was specifically designed to interfere with the neural implants that all Valteron officers use to communicate with their ship's computers. Across the alien fleet, chaos erupted as command systems failed and officers found themselves unable to coordinate with their crews. Ships collided with each other as navigation systems went offline. Weapons fired randomly as targeting computers malfunctioned. Neural disruptor is active, Dr. Martinez reported. Enemy command and control is down across their entire fleet. Admiral Blake watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Captain Rodriguez, how are our fighters performing? Better than expected, Mom. We've destroyed 37 enemy ships with no losses on our side. The aliens are trying to retreat, but they can't get their hyperspace drives online. Why not? Dr. Cooper smiled grimly. Because we're jamming those too. I reverse engineered their faster-than-light technology from the HFY wreckage. They're trapped in our solar system until we decide to let them go. On the bridge of the Dominion's edge, Prince Theron realized he was facing something impossible. The primitive humans he had come to conquer were systematically destroying his fleet with weapons that shouldn't exist and tactics that made no sense. Get me a communication channel to the planet, he ordered desperately. I can't, my lord. Our communication systems are being jammed. Then send a message drone back to Valtara Prime. My father needs to know what's happening here. The hyperspace inhibitor field is blocking all FTL communication, my lord. Nothing can leave this system. Prince Theron felt fear for the first time in his life. He had come to Earth expecting an easy victory over a primitive species. Instead, he found himself trapped and outgunned by an enemy that had been hiding its true capabilities. Captain Rodriguez led her squadron in a direct assault on the flagship itself. Dragon Squadron, target the big one. That's their command ship. The Dominion's Edge, pride of the Valteran fleet, found its mighty shields failing under the sustained assault of weapons that operated outside the laws of physics as the Valterans understood them. My lord, we have to abandon ship. Commander. Vex shouted over the alarms. The humans are tearing us apart. Prince Theron looked at the tactical display one last time. Of his 500 Prince Theron stared at the tactical display in horror. His magnificent fleet of 500 ships had been reduced to fewer than 80 operational vessels in less than 2 hours. The humans were not supposed to be capable of this level of resistance. Status report, he demanded, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Commander Vex looked pale as he read from his damaged console. 67 ships destroyed completely, my lord. 353 ships disabled or severely damaged. Our casualties are over 400,000 dead or wounded. And the humans? 0 confirmed kills, my lord. Their fighters appear to be completely intact. Prince Theron slammed his fist on the command console. This is impossible. Our intelligence was perfect. These humans were supposed to be primitives with chemical rockets and metal bullets. Perhaps our intelligence was deliberately fed false information, Commander Vex suggested carefully. By who? They don't even have contact with other species. What Prince Theron didn't know was that his assumption was completely wrong. Deep beneath Mount Cheyenne, Admiral Blake was coordinating the most complex military operation in human history, using 75 years of preparation and intelligence provided by the HFY. Captain Rodriguez, what's the status of your squadron? All fighters operational, ma'am. The aliens are trying to regroup at the edge of the solar system, but they're still within range of our weapons. Dr. Cooper, how long can we maintain the hyperspace inhibitor field? Indefinitely. Admiral, we're drawing power directly from the Earth's magnetic field. They're not going anywhere unless we let them. Admiral Blake studied the tactical display. The remaining Valteran ships were clustered together near Neptune's orbit, apparently trying to figure out what had gone wrong with their invasion. She knew this was the perfect opportunity to finish them off completely. All units, prepare for Phase 2. We're going to show these aliens what happens when you threaten humanity. Captain Rodriguez received her new orders and smiled grimly. Phase 2 called for something the Volterans would never see coming. A direct assault on their flagship using stealth technology that would make her fighters completely invisible to their sensors. Dragon Squadron, switch to stealth mode. We're going hunting. The human fighters seemed to vanish from Volteran's sensors as their cloaking devices activated. The technology had been reverse-engineered from Kethver ships, and it was completely unknown to the Volteran military. On the bridge of the Dominion's edge, Prince Theron was trying to contact his father when the ship's alarms began sounding. "Again? What now?" he shouted. "Unknown contacts approaching, my lord. But our sensors can't get a lock on them." "How many?" "Impossible to tell, my lord. They're appearing and disappearing on our screens randomly." What the Volterans were seeing was the result of human stealth technology that operated by bending light and energy around the fighters. To their sensors, the human ships looked like ghosts. Their one moment and gone, the next Captain Rodriguez led her squadron in a careful approach to the massive alien flagship. The ship was over a kilometer long and bristling with weapons, but its crew was in chaos from the earlier battle. "Dragon 2, Dragon 3, you're with me. We're going aboard that ship." Lieutenant Danny Foster checked his equipment one more time. "Dragon Leader, are you sure about this? That thing is huge." "That's exactly why we need to get inside it. Our external weapons can damage it, but if we plant charges in the right places, we can destroy it completely." Sergeant Pete Johnson, the squadron's demolitions expert, opened a channel from Dragon 3. "I've got enough quantum charges to blow a hole in a moon. Just get me inside that thing." The three human fighters approached the Dominion's edge using docking ports that the Volterans had never bothered to defend. Why would they? No enemy had ever managed to get close enough to board one of their ships during battle. Captain Rodriguez's fighter attached itself to an airlock on the underside of the huge ship. Within seconds, she was cutting through the alien hull with tools that operated on the same quantum principles as her weapons. "We're inside," she reported. "Beginning search for critical systems." The interior of the Volteran ship was unlike anything the humans had seen. Corridors stretched in all directions, lit by a strange purple glow. The walls were covered in symbols that meant nothing to human eyes, and the air had a metallic taste that made breathing uncomfortable. "Sergeant Johnson, where do we need to place the charges for maximum effect?" "Primary power core, life support, systems, and the main computer core. Take out those three systems, and this ship becomes a floating coffin." The three humans moved through the ship like shadows, their training allowing them to avoid the alien crew members who were running back and forth in panic. The Voltarans were so focused on the battle outside that they never thought to check for intruders inside their own vessel. Meanwhile, Dr. Martinez was monitoring Volteran communications from her command post on Earth. What she discovered made her smile with grim satisfaction. "Admiral Blake, I'm intercepting communications between the alien ships. They're completely confused. They have no idea how we're doing what we're doing." "What are they saying?" "They're asking each other if we're using some kind of unknown technology. One of their officers suggested that we might be more advanced than their intelligence indicated." Admiral Blake laughed. "If only they knew. We're using their own technology against them, improved with 75 years of human engineering." The truth was that humanity had taken the basic concepts provided by the Kethver and improved them in ways that the original creators had never imagined. Human scientists had a gift for taking existing technology and making it better, faster, and more efficient. On the Dominion's edge, Captain Rodriguez and her team had reached the ship's power core. It was a massive chamber filled with machinery that hummed with barely contained energy. "This is it," Sergeant Johnson said as he began placing quantum charges around the room. "These babies will create a cascade failure that will tear this ship." apart from the inside. How long do we have once you activate them? 10 minutes to get clear. After that, this whole ship becomes a very expensive firework. As they worked, Lieutenant Foster kept watch at the entrance to the chamber. Captain, we've got company coming. Looks like they finally figured out we're here. A group of Volteron soldiers rounded the corner, their weapons charged and ready. But they had never fought humans before, and they had no idea what they were dealing with. Captain Rodriguez and her team moved with speed and precision that the aliens couldn't match. The firefight was brief and one-sided. Human weapons punched through Volteron armor like it was made of paper, while the aliens' energy blasts couldn't penetrate the humans' advanced battle suits. Clear, Lieutenant Foster reported, but more are coming. Charges are set, Sergeant Johnson announced. We need to move now. The 3 humans fought their way back through the ship, leaving a trail of disabled Volteron soldiers behind them. Their training and superior equipment made them nearly unstoppable in close combat. Back on Earth, Admiral Blake was preparing the final phase of the operation. All ground-based weapons, prepare to fire on my command. Target the remaining ships in the alien fleet. Colonel Steve Parker commanded a network of hidden artillery installations that had been disguised as ordinary buildings and industrial facilities. Ground batteries ready, Admiral. We have targeting solutions on all enemy vessels. What the Volterans didn't know was that humanity had been building weapons in secret for decades. Every major city had defensive systems that looked like normal infrastructure, but were actually capable of striking targets in deep space. Fire, Admiral Blake commanded. Across the Earth, beams of coherent energy lanced upward from hidden installations. To anyone watching from space, it would have looked like the planet itself was shooting at the alien fleet. Prince Theron watched in horror as more of his ships exploded under the barrage from Earth's surface. How are they doing this? How can they hit us from so far away? My lord, their weapons appear to be using some form of quantum targeting system. They're hitting us with perfect accuracy, despite the distance. And our return fire? Completely ineffective, my lord. Our weapons are being blocked by some kind of planetary defense system. The truth was that Earth was protected by the same quantum shield technology that had been used in the human fighters. Just on a much larger scale, Dr. Cooper had spent 30 years figuring out how to extend the shield field around the entire planet. Captain Rodriguez and her team reached their fighters just as the quantum charges were about to detonate. Dragon Squadron, clear the blast zone immediately. The 3 fighters launched from the Dominion's edge, just as Sergeant Johnson's explosives detonated. The massive alien flagship convulsed as cascade failures spread through its systems. Power grids failed, life support shut down, and the main computer core exploded in a shower of sparks. Prince Theron felt his ship dying around him. Abandoned ship, all crew to the escape pods. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late for most of his crew. The Dominion's edge was breaking apart, and there weren't enough escape pods for everyone aboard. My lord, the escape pod is ready, Commander Vex reported. Prince Theron looked one last time at the bridge where he had planned his glorious conquest. Instead of Victor. 6 hours after the battle began, the last Volteron ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Captain Rodriguez watched from her fighter as debris from the alien cruiser scattered across space, joining the wreckage of nearly 500 other ships that had dared to threaten Earth. Dragon Leader to base, the last enemy vessel has been destroyed. Repeat, all alien ships have been eliminated. From her command center beneath Mount Cheyenne, Admiral Blake felt a moment of satisfaction that she had waited 75 years to experience. Acknowledged, Dragon Leader. All squadrons return to base. Phase 3 is complete. But the victory was not just about destroying ships. Dr. Cooper had been monitoring and recording every piece of alien technology during the battle. Humanity had not only survived the invasion, they had gained complete intelligence about their enemy's capabilities. "Admiral, the technology scans are incredible," Dr. Cooper reported excitedly. "We now have detailed information about their weapons, shields, engines, and communication systems. We know more about Voltron technology than they know about ours." The captured Prince Theron sat in a holding cell that had been specifically designed for alien prisoners. The room was comfortable but secure, with walls that could contain beings much stronger than humans. Lieutenant Sarah Blake stood outside his cell, preparing for the interrogation that would determine humanity's next move. "Are you ready to talk?" she asked through the translation device that Dr. Martinez had built from captured Voltron equipment. Prince Theron looked up at his captor with eyes that showed both defeat and confusion. "How did you do it? How did a primitive species destroy the Third Royal Fleet?" "We're not as primitive as you thought," Lieutenant Blake replied. "Your people made the mistake of underestimating humans. It's a mistake that cost you everything." "Impossible. Our intelligence reports were perfect. You had no space fleet, no energy weapons, no advanced technology." Lieutenant Blake smiled coldly. "Your intelligence reports were exactly what we wanted you to see. We've been preparing for this day since 1947, when your enemies told us you were coming." "The Kethvar," Prince Theron whispered, his face showing understanding for the first time. "They warned you. They did more than warn us. They gave us everything we needed to defeat you. Your shield frequencies, your communication protocols, your tactical doctrines. We've spent 75 years learning how to beat the Voltron Empire." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, King Zephyros was growing concerned about the lack of communication from his son's fleet. The Third Royal Fleet should have conquered Earth within days and sent word of their victory. Instead, there had been complete silence for over a week. "General Krex, have we heard anything from Prince Theron?" "No, my lord. All attempts to contact the fleet have failed. It's possible they are maintaining communication silence for strategic reasons." King Zephyros frowned. "Strategic reasons?" "They were conquering a world of primitives, not fighting a Joe. Major campaign." What the king didn't know was that his son's fleet no longer existed. The 500 ships that had left Voltara Prime with such confidence were now nothing but debris floating in Earth's solar system. On Earth, President Morrison addressed the world from the United Nations building in New York. For the first time in human history, he was speaking to a planet that knew it was not alone in the universe. "My fellow citizens of Earth, today humanity faced its greatest challenge and achieved its greatest victory. An alien empire attempted to conquer our world, and we destroyed them completely." The president gestured to a massive screen behind him that showed images of the alien wreckage. "These invaders came to our world, expecting to find a primitive species that would surrender without a fight. Instead, they found humans who had been preparing for this moment for decades." Around the world, people watched in amazement as their leaders revealed the existence of the Terran Defense Initiative and the secret war that had been won in their name. For 75 years, the best minds of our species have worked in secret to develop the weapons and technology needed to defend our world. Today, their sacrifice and dedication saved the human race. In the TDI Command Center, Admiral Blake was already planning humanity's next move. The victory over the Voltron fleet had given them breathing room, but she knew more aliens would come eventually. "Dr. Cooper, how long will it take to reverse engineer their faster-than-light technology?" "With the intact components we've recovered, maybe 6 months. Their hyperspace drives are actually less sophisticated than I expected, and their weapons already done. We can start mass-producing quantum phase weapons immediately. In fact, I think we can improve on their design significantly." Captain Rodriguez entered the command center, still wearing her flight suit from the battle. "Admiral, my pilots are asking about our next mission. Are we going on the offensive?" "Admiral." Blake considered the question carefully. "Not yet. First, we need to build a proper space fleet. We can't defend Earth with just 48 fighters forever." Dr. Martinez looked up from her communication station. "Admiral, I'm monitoring alien communication networks across the galaxy. Word of the fleet's destruction is starting to spread." "What are they saying?" "Most species don't believe it. The Valteron Empire has never lost a fleet to a primitive world before. But some of the transmissions suggest that other conquered species are starting to ask questions about Valteron invincibility." This was exactly what Admiral Blake had hoped to hear. The destruction of the Third Royal Fleet would do more than just protect Earth. It would show the entire galaxy that the Valteron Empire could be beaten. 3 months later, King Zephyros received news that shattered his understanding of the universe. A probe sent to investigate the silence from Earth's solar system had returned with data that seemed impossible. "My lord," General Krex said quietly, "the probe has confirmed our worst fears. The Third Royal Fleet has been completely destroyed." King Zephyros rose from his throne, his face showing emotions that no Valteron had seen in centuries. "Destroyed? By whom?" "By the humans, my lord. The probe detected the wreckage of all 500 ships, including the Dominion's Edge. There were no survivors." "Impossible," the king roared. "The humans are primitives. They have no space fleet, no energy weapons." "The probe's data suggests otherwise, my lord. The humans appear to have technology that is superior to our own in several key areas." For the first time in his long reign, King Zephyros felt something he had never experienced before: fear. If the humans could destroy the Third Royal Fleet, what else were they capable of? "What do you recommend, General?" "We have 2 options, my lord. We can send a much larger fleet to avenge Prince Theron's defeat, or we can attempt to negotiate with the humans." King Zephyros considered both options carefully. Sending another fleet would be expensive and risky, especially if the humans were as dangerous as they appeared to be. But negotiating with a species that had humiliated the Valteron Empire would be seen as weakness by his other enemies. "Prepare the First Royal Fleet," he decided. "If the humans want a war, they will have one." But on Earth, humanity was no longer the same species that had cowered before alien technology just months earlier. Dr. Cooper's reverse engineering projects had produced weapons and ships that were beyond anything the Valterans could imagine. Captain Rodriguez now commanded a squadron of 50 brand new fighters, each one equipped with weapons that could destroy entire Valteron battleships. Hidden shipyards on the dark side of the moon were producing more vessels every day. "Admiral Blake," Dr. Cooper reported excitedly, "I have some news that will change everything." "What is it?" "I figured out how to improve on Valteron hyperspace technology. We can travel faster than they can, and we can do it more quietly. They won't even know we're coming until it's too late." Admiral Blake smiled as she realized what this meant. "Dr. Cooper, you've just given us the ability to take this war to them." The liberation of Earth had been just the beginning. Now humanity was ready to become the liberators of the galaxy, freeing the hundreds of worlds that lived under Valteron oppression. Prince Theron, still a prisoner in his comfortable cell, watched human news broadcasts with growing amazement. In just 3 months, the species he had tried to conquer had gone from defending themselves to building an interstellar fleet. "You're not going to stop with just defending Earth, are you?" he asked Lieutenant Blake during one of their regular conversations. "Would you, if someone tried to enslave your people?" Prince Theron thought about the question and realized he already knew the answer. The humans had not just defeated the Valteron Empire, they had humiliated it. There would be no peace between their species until one of them was completely destroyed. But as he watched reports of human shipyards and weapons factories, Prince Theron began to suspect which species would ultimately survive the coming war. The bridge of the first human starship, to achieve faster-than-light travel, Captain Rodriguez looked out at the stars with new eyes. Humanity was no longer trapped on a single world, hiding from alien empires and hoping to remain unnoticed. "Set course for the Valteran frontier," she ordered. "It's time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." The age of human expansion had begun, and the universe would never be the same.
The warning alarms blared across the bridge of the Alliance battlecruiser Defiance. Captain Peter Collins gripped the arms of his command chair as another volley of enemy fire rocked the ship. Through the main viewport, the space around Helios Prime was filled with the crystalline ships of the Vordax fleet. Their purple-hued weapons tore through the remaining Alliance defense satellites. "Shield status," Peter demanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Susan Miller worked frantically at her station. Her fingers flew across the control panel as she rerouted power. "Shields at 28%, Captain. We can't." "Take another direct hit." Peter surveyed the tactical display floating in the center of the bridge. The blue dots representing Alliance ships were disappearing one by one. Red dots of Vordax vessels moved in perfect formation, surrounding the planet like hungry predators. The situation was beyond grim. It was hopeless. "Status of the evacuation transports?" Peter asked. Communications Officer Greg Bailey shook his head. His young face was smeared with sweat and grime from a panel explosion earlier. 3 transport groups have jumped to safety. 2 more are still loading civilians. They need another 30 minutes minimum. Peter knew they didn't have 30 minutes. The Vordax were not known for patience or mercy. In the 3 years since they first appeared at the edge of Allied space, the crystalline aliens had conquered 12 systems. They left nothing behind but stripped planets and broken ships. "All power to forward shields," Peter ordered. "Plot an intercept course with that command vessel. We'll buy the transport some time." The bridge crew exchanged quick glances. They understood what this meant. None of them objected. Navigator Ellen King nodded solemnly. "Course plotted, Captain. Intercept in 6 minutes." Outside the viewports, Peter could see the planet Helios Prime. Its blue-green surface was marred by spreading black patches, where Vordax ground forces had begun their attack. The capital city's protective dome had failed 2 hours ago. Now columns of smoke rose from what had been a shining example of Alliance architecture and culture. The Defiance shuddered as another blast struck its weakening shields. "Captain," Susan called out, "I'm detecting unusual readings from the far side of the moon." Peter frowned. "Vordax reinforcements?" "No, sir. The energy signature doesn't match Vordax technology. I've never seen anything like it." Before Peter could respond, 3 Vordax destroyers moved to block the Defiance's path. Their crystalline hulls glinted in the light of Helios Prime's sun. "Evasive maneuvers," Peter ordered. The Defiance rolled sharply, avoiding the first volley of enemy fire. The ship's engine strained as Ellen pushed them beyond safety limits. They wouldn't last long at this output, but that hardly mattered now. "Weapons, target the lead destroyer," Peter commanded. "Fire everything we have." Weapons Officer Joe Reeves didn't hesitate. Firing main cannons and missile batteries, the Defiance unleashed its arsenal. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the lead Vordax ship. The destroyer's shields flared, bright purple as they absorbed most of the attack. A few missiles penetrated, causing minor damage to its hull. "Minimal effect, Captain," Joe reported grimly. "Their shields are still at 80%. Peter had expected this. Alliance weapons had proven largely ineffective against Vordax technology from the beginning of the war. It was like throwing stones at a battleship. The tactical display updated, showing civilian transport ships rising from the planet's surface. They were packed with refugees, the last free citizens of Helios Prime. If these ships were destroyed, an entire culture would vanish. 5 billion people called this planet home. Only a few million would escape. "They're targeting the transports," Susan warned, her voice tight with anger. Peter made a quick decision. Change course. Put us between the Vordax and those transports. Ellen adjusted their heading immediately. The Defiance turned sharply, engines blazing as they raced to intercept the Vordax attack force. Open a channel to Alliance Command, Peter ordered. Greg worked his console. Channel open, sir, but there's heavy interference. I don't know if they'll receive our transmission. Peter leaned forward. This is Captain Peter Collins of the Alliance cruiser Defiance. Helios Prime has fallen. I repeat, Helios Prime has fallen. We are covering the evacuation of civilians, but our forces are overwhelmed. The Vordax fleet numbers over 300 vessels. He paused, then added, if anyone receives this message, the coordinates for the civilian refugee fleet are attached. They will need protection. Another hit rocked the ship. The lights flickered and emergency systems activated. Shields at 12%, Susan reported. Hull breaches on decks 9 through 11. Seal those sections, Peter ordered. Evacuate all personnel to inner compartments. The Defiance shuddered again as they took fire from multiple directions. On the tactical display, Peter could see they had succeeded in drawing attention away from the transports. The last civilian ships were now clearing the atmosphere. Sir, Susan called out suddenly. That strange energy reading I detected earlier, it's growing stronger. And now I'm picking up hundreds of similar signatures. Peter turned to her station. Show me. Susan transferred the readings to the main display. Even Peter, with his 20 years of Alliance service, had never seen energy patterns like these. They pulsed and shifted in ways that defied standard detection algorithms. Could it be a sensor malfunction, he asked. I've run 3 diagnostic checks, Susan replied. These readings are real. Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear open. A kilometer-wide rift appeared near the moon, glowing with blue-white energy. Through this impossible opening came a ship, sleek and dark with red striping along its hull. It was smaller than Alliance battleships, but radiated power in a way that made the hair on Peter's neck stand up. Then another rift opened, and another. Within moments, dozens of tiers in space appeared around Helios Prime. From each emerged similar vessels of various sizes. What in the stars? Ellen whispered. The largest of the unknown ships, easily the size of an Alliance carrier, moved into position directly opposite the Vordax command vessel. For a moment, everything seemed to pause as the newcomers arranged themselves in a perfect defensive formation around the remaining Alliance ships and the fleeing transports. A transmission cut through all communication channels, bypassing encryption and security protocols as if they didn't exist. This is Admiral Diane Howard of the United Earth Defense Force to all vessels in the Helios Prime system. Alliance ships, move your civilian transports behind our defensive line. Vordax forces, you are ordered to cease hostilities immediately and withdraw from this system. The bridge of the Defiance fell completely silent. Earth? The primitive world under non-interference directives? How had they developed jump technology? How had they built a fleet? Sir, Greg said finally, breaking the stunned silence. The lead Earth vessel is hailing us directly. Peter straightened his uniform, suddenly aware of how disheveled he must look after hours of battle. On screen, the image of a woman in a dark blue uniform appeared. Her hair was silver gray, cut short in a practical style. Her face showed age and experience, but her eyes were sharp and evaluating. Captain Collins, Admiral Howard said, get your damaged vessels and those transports to these coordinates. Data streamed to their navigation system. We'll handle the Vordax. Peter found his voice. Admiral, the Vordax fleet outnumbers you. Their shields are resistant to our strongest weapons. For the first time, the Admiral's stern expression softened into something resembling a smile. Yes, Captain. We know exactly what we're facing. Now move your people to safety. Earth has entered the fight. The Vordax responded to Admiral Howard's ultimatum with a barrage of weapons fire. Streams of purple energy lanced toward the Earth vessels. Captain Peter Collins held his breath as he watched from the bridge of the Defiance. He expected to see the newcomers shattered by the overwhelming firepower that had decimated Alliance fleets for 3 years. What happened instead defied explanation. The Earth ships made no attempt to evade. The energy weapons struck their hulls directly, and then something remarkable occurred. The impact seemed to spread across the surface of each vessel, the purple energy dispersing like water on a hot pan. Within seconds, the ship's hulls glowed, with the same purple hue as the Vordax weapons. "They're absorbing the energy," Susan Miller said in disbelief, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. "No, wait. They're redirecting it through their hull systems." Peter leaned forward. "Are you saying their shields—" "They don't appear to be using shields at all, Captain," Susan interrupted, her voice filled with wonder. "At least not in any way we understand them." The largest Earth vessel, which Admiral Howard had identified as the Invincible, pulsed with the absorbed energy. Then, with startling suddenness, it released the power back toward the Vordax command ship, transformed into a focused beam of blinding white light. The beam struck the crystalline hull of the Vordax vessel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks spread across its surface like ice breaking on a spring lake. Seconds later, the command ship shattered into thousands of glittering fragments. "Navigation," Peter ordered, finding his voice again. "Get us to those coordinates the Admiral provided. All surviving Alliance vessels form up around the civilian transports." As the Defiance limped away from the battle zone, Peter couldn't tear his eyes from the tactical display. The Earth fleet moved, with a precision he had never witnessed before. Their smaller vessels, fighters he assumed, darted between the larger Vordax ships with impossible agility. They seemed to predict the enemy's movements before they happened. "Sir," Greg Bailey called from communications, "we're receiving a priority message from Alliance High Command." "Put it through," Peter replied. The worn face of Admiral John Winters appeared on screen. His uniform was disheveled, and the command center behind him flickered with emergency lighting. "Collins," Winters said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "What in blazes is happening at Helios Prime? Our long-range sensors show energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen." "Sir," Peter responded, "Earth has entered the war." "Admiral," Winters stared in disbelief. "Earth? That can't be possible. They're a pre-contact civilization under non-interference directives." "With all due respect, sir," Peter said, gesturing to the battle unfolding behind them, "they very much are not." Before Winters could respond, Susan called out from her station. "Captain, the Vordax are changing formation. They're concentrating their forces against the Earth flagship." Peter turned back to the viewport. Over 100 Vordax vessels now surrounded the Invincible, their weapons creating a web of purple energy directed at the Earthship. The Invincible's hull absorbed the first wave of attacks, but the second and third came too quickly. Peter saw sections of the ship's outer hull begin to buckle under the assault. Then something unexpected happened again. The Earth vessel seemed to shimmer, and suddenly there were brief flashes of blue light all around it. Where each flash appeared, an Earth fighter emerged, as if from nowhere. "Short-range jumps," Susan whispered. "They're jumping their fighters directly from launch bays into combat positions." The fighters immediately engaged the Vordax ships, drawing fire away from the Invincible. The Earth flagship used this moment to perform its own short-range jump, repositioning to the rear of the Vordax formation. Once there, it launched what appeared to be missiles, small, sleek projectiles that moved too fast for normal tracking. When the projectiles struck the Vordax ships, they didn't explode. Instead, they seemed to phase through the crystal hulls. "What are those weapons?" Peter asked, unable to contain his curiosity despite their retreat. Susan studied her readings. They appear to be some kind of phase-shifted munitions. They're bypassing the Vordax shields entirely and detonating inside their vessels. One by one, the Vordax ships began to explode from within, their beautiful crystal structures shattering into clouds of glittering dust. The Defiance reached the coordinates, provided by Admiral Howard. 5 other damaged Alliance vessels had already gathered there, along with the civilian transport ships. They formed a loose defensive circle, though Peter suspected their protection was now unnecessary. A small Earth vessel approached their position. Unlike the warships engaged with the Vordax, this one appeared to be a diplomatic craft. It was sleek and silver with the words Earth Diplomatic Corps written in multiple languages along its hull. "They're requesting permission to dock, Captain," Greg reported. Peter straightened his uniform. Grant permission. Alert security to prepare a welcome for our unexpected allies. The Earthship docked with practiced ease. Peter and a small reception team waited at the airlock. When the doors slid open, a woman in a formal gray uniform stepped through. She appeared to be in her 50s with short brown hair and intelligent eyes that took in every detail of the Alliance vessel. "Captain Collins," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Ambassador Linda Martinez of Earth. I believe we have much to discuss." Peter shook her hand, noting the strength in her grip. "Indeed we do, Ambassador. Starting with how Earth managed to hide its true capabilities from the Alliance for so long." Ambassador Martinez smiled. "Perhaps we should move to your conference room. This will be a rather lengthy explanation." As they walked through the corridors of the Defiance, Peter noticed the Earth diplomat studying the Alliance technology with polite but unmistakable disinterest. It was the look of someone examining primitive tools. In the conference room, senior officers gathered around the table. Ambassador Martinez activated a small device that projected a holographic display of Earth above the center of the table. "For 70 years, she began, your Alliance has maintained a non-interference directive around our solar system. Your observers monitored our television broadcasts, analyzed our internet communications, and watched our seemingly slow progress into space." The hologram shifted to show what appeared to be ordinary Earth cities and early space stations, exactly what Alliance intelligence had reported for decades. "What you were seeing," Martinez continued, "was exactly what we wanted you to see." The hologram changed again, revealing massive underground facilities and lunar bases hidden on the far side of Earth's moon. Shipyards that dwarfed anything the Alliance had built orbited Jupiter and Saturn, concealed by the gas giants' radiation fields. 70 years ago, one of your survey ships was careless. We detected it, tracked it, and captured enough of its transmissions to understand what we were dealing with. The government leaders of that time made a crucial decision. We would appear primitive while building in secret. Peter leaned forward. But why? The Alliance would have welcomed Earth's membership. Ambassador Martinez's expression hardened slightly. "Would you, as equals? Or would we have been subjected to your cultural integration programs, required to abandon our aggressive tendencies, asked to disarm our militaries as a condition of membership?" The Alliance officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. The truth was, Earth's assessment was accurate. Those would have been the exact conditions for membership. "We chose our own path," Martinez said. "And now the Alliance needs us more than we ever needed you." Outside the viewport, another Vordax cruiser exploded as Earth fighters executed a perfectly coordinated attack. The battle for Helios Prime was already turning, and Peter Collins knew that nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. While Ambassador Martinez continued her explanation aboard the Defiance, Admiral Diane Howard directed the battle from the bridge of the Invincible. Her experienced eyes tracked the tactical display where human vessels systematically dismantled the once-feared Vordax fleet. "Status report," Diane ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos of battle. Tactical Officer Kyle Bennett responded immediately. 23 Vordax capital ships destroyed, 47 disabled. Our losses stand at 4 fighters and minor damage to 6 cruisers. No casualties reported yet. No casualties. Diane allowed herself a small smile. The adaptive armor systems were performing even better than expected in actual combat. Years of preparation were paying off. "The Vordax command structure is in disarray," Kyle continued. "They're breaking formation and attempting individual attacks rather than coordinated efforts." "They've never faced defeat before," Diane observed. "They don't know how to respond to it." Lieutenant Ben Morris looked up from his communications station. "Admiral, the Vordax are broadcasting on all frequencies. Should I put it through?" Diane nodded. "Let's hear what they have to say." The main screen filled with the image of a Vordax commander. The crystalline beings had no faces as humans understood them. Only complex patterns of light that pulsed and shifted within their transparent bodies. The translator systems converted these patterns into speech. "Unknown aggressors," the Vordax message began. You interfere in matters beyond your understanding. This system falls under Vordak's claim by right of superior strength. Withdraw now or face complete annihilation. Kyle snorted. They're still making threats while we're destroying their fleet. They've never known anything else, Diane replied. Open a channel. Ben complied, and Diane stood straighter as the camera focused on her. Vordak's command, this is Admiral Diane Howard of Earth. You entered Alliance territory without provocation. You have attacked civilian populations and committed what we classify as war crimes. We will not withdraw. You have 1 hour to surrender all forces and prepare for peace negotiations, or we will destroy every Vordak's vessel in this system. She nodded, and Ben cut the transmission. You think they'll surrender? Kyle asked. Diane shook her head. No, but it's important to offer the option. That's something the Alliance would do. She turned to her executive officer. Commander Frank Harris, prepare all ships for final assault. Phase 2 weapons are now authorized. Frank nodded grimly and began issuing orders to the fleet. The Vordak's response came 15 minutes later, not in words but in actions. Their remaining ships formed a new pattern, linking their energy systems together in what Alliance intelligence had identified as preparation for a system-wide electromagnetic pulse, a tactic that had disabled Alliance fleets in previous battles. They're charging for an EMP strike, Kyle reported. Energy readings are climbing rapidly. Exactly as expected, Diane said calmly. All ships, switch to isolated power configuration Alpha. Deploy countermeasure drones. Throughout the human fleet, systems shifted to a protected state specifically designed to withstand Vordak's electromagnetic attacks. Small drones launched from each vessel, forming a network around the fleet. When the Vordak's released their pulse, a wave of energy that spread across the battlefield like a ripple in a pond, the drones activated. They created a counterfield that not only protected the Earth vessels, but reflected the energy back toward its source. The Vordak's ships, unprepared for their own weapon to be turned against them, suffered immediate system failures. Lights flickered across their crystalline hulls as critical systems shut down. Now, Diane ordered. All ships execute attack pattern Epsilon. The Earth fleet moved as one, surrounding the disabled Vordak's vessels. Precision strikes targeted propulsion systems and weapons arrays, rendering the enemy ships powerless without destroying them completely. Within 10 minutes, the battle for Helios Prime was effectively over. The remaining Vordak's vessels hung dead in space, their crews trapped inside. Secure the captured vessels, Diane instructed. Prepare boarding teams. I want their navigation data and any intelligence we can gather about their homeworld. As the bridge crew carried out her orders, Diane received a private message from Earth. President Laura Garcia's face appeared on her personal display. Admiral, congratulations on your victory, the president said. The Alliance Council has requested an emergency meeting. Ambassador Martinez has already begun preliminary discussions. They'll have questions, Diane noted. Many, Laura agreed with a slight smile. And we've prepared answers for decades. How goes the ground situation on Helios Prime? Diane switched her display to show the planet's surface. Major Samantha Jones has established 3 secure zones around the main population centers. The Vordak's ground forces are more difficult than their fleet. They fight to the death and have no concept of surrender. Casualties? Minimal on our side. The powered armor gives our troops a significant advantage, but civilian losses were high before we arrived. Preliminary estimates suggest 30% of the planet's population did not survive the initial attack. The president's expression grew solemn. A tragedy, but without our intervention, it would have been total extinction. Proceed with the recovery operation as planned. I'll handle the political situation with the Alliance. Yes, Madam President. Back on the Defiance, Captain Peter Collins was still trying to process everything Ambassador Martinez had revealed. The history of Earth's secret development was astonishing. So when our observers reported that Earth was struggling with climate change and resource shortages, he said, "You were actually expanding throughout your solar system," Linda Martinez finished for him. The climate crisis was partly real and partly theater. It gave us the perfect excuse to develop advanced energy systems and materials science without raising suspicion. While your observers watched our public space agencies take small steps with chemical rockets, our actual military and scientific vessels were already exploring neighboring star systems. Susan Miller, who had joined the meeting, shook her head in disbelief. But the Alliance monitoring stations around your system, surely they would have detected your ships leaving. Linda smiled. Your monitoring technology relies on detecting conventional engine signatures and jump points. Our propulsion systems work differently. We don't create jump points. We slip between the fabric of space itself. That's impossible, Lieutenant Ellen King protested. The energy requirements alone would be beyond Alliance science, Linda said gently. Yes, just as your ancestors would have found nuclear power impossible. Science evolves, Lieutenant. Peter leaned forward. What I don't understand is why reveal yourselves now. You could have remained hidden, safe in your solar system. Ambassador Martinez's expression turned serious. We've been monitoring the Vordax advance for 15 years. Our deep space surveillance network extends far beyond what you might imagine. We knew this war was coming before the Alliance did. And you did nothing? Peter asked, unable to keep the accusation from his voice. We did everything, Linda corrected him. We built our fleet. We studied Vordax technology and developed countermeasures. We prepared for this day. But humanity follows one principle above all others. We prepare for the worst but hope for the best. We wanted the Alliance to succeed on its own terms. She gestured to the viewport, where Earth ships were now towing damaged Alliance vessels toward a repair formation. But we also prepared for the day you might fail, she added. Today was that day. A communication officer interrupted with an urgent message. Captain Collins, Admiral Howard requests your presence aboard the Invincible. She's convening a war council with all surviving Alliance commanders. Peter stood. Please inform the Admiral I'll be there shortly. He turned to Ambassador Martinez. I assume you'll be joining me? Linda nodded. Of course, this is just the beginning, Captain. The Vordax will regroup. They've never faced defeat before, which makes them unpredictable and dangerous. What happens now? Peter asked as they headed toward the shuttle bay. Now, Linda replied, humanity joins the galactic community, but not as junior partners or as students. We come as teachers. Our history is filled with wars and conflicts your species have never known. Where the Alliance sees battle as a regrettable necessity, we see it as an art form we've perfected over thousands of years. The shuttle departed the Defiance, flying toward the massive Earth flagship. Around them, the combined fleet of Earth and Alliance vessels orbited Helios Prime, a new force in the galaxy that the Vordax had never anticipated. The War Council aboard the Invincible brought together the surviving Alliance commanders and Earth's military leadership. Captain Peter Collins felt out of place among the high-ranking officers, but Admiral Howard had specifically requested his presence due to his first-hand experience with Vordax tactics. The conference room was unlike anything in Alliance vessels. Instead of a traditional table with chairs, it featured a circular platform where three-dimensional holograms created an immersive tactical display. The officers stood within the display, surrounded by real-time battle data. Admiral Howard took her position at the center of the platform. Welcome to the first Joint Alliance-Earth strategic meeting. The battle for Helios Prime is won, but the war is far from over. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show the wider galactic map. Red markers indicated Vordax-controlled systems, while blue showed Alliance territory. A disturbing number of previously blue systems now glowed red. The Vordax controlled 28 former Alliance systems, Howard continued. Intelligence gathered from captured vessels confirms our suspicions. They intend to continue their expansion until they've conquered the entire galactic arm. High Commander Eli Ward of the Alliance forces frowned at the display. The elderly officer had arrived via emergency jump just hours after the battle. His weathered face showed both fatigue and skepticism. Admiral Howard, he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. While we appreciate Earth's intervention at Helios Prime, I must question your overall assessment. The Alliance has studied the Vordax for 3 years. Their patterns suggest they will consolidate their gains before advancing further. Kyle Bennett, the tactical officer from the Invincible, stepped forward. "With respect, Commander, your intelligence is incomplete." He adjusted the display to show a new layer of data: shipping routes, communication patterns, and resource movements within Vordax territory. This information was far more detailed than anything the Alliance had gathered. Earth's deep space monitoring network has been tracking the Vordax for 15 years, Kyle explained. Their strategy is clear. They establish forward bases, then launch simultaneous attacks across multiple fronts. They're preparing for their next offensive here, and here. He highlighted 3 Alliance systems near the current front. Commander Ward's expression darkened. 15 years? You knew about this threat for 12 years before they even attacked the Alliance, and you said nothing? Ambassador Martinez stepped smoothly into the conversation. Commander, Earth was classified as a pre-contact civilization under your own directive. Any attempt to warn you would have exposed our true capabilities and violated your non-interference protocols. So you watched worlds burn because of a technicality? Another Alliance officer demanded. The tension in the room rose instantly. Peter noticed several Earth officers stiffen, their faces showing controlled anger. Admiral Howard raised her hand, silencing the brewing argument. What's done is done. We are here now, and we offer not just our fleet, but our knowledge and technology. The question is simple. Will the Alliance accept our help as equals, or would you prefer we withdraw our forces? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Commander Ward looked around at his fellow Alliance officers, then at the display, showing the overwhelming Vordax advance. We would be fools to refuse, he finally admitted. But the Alliance Council will have questions. Many questions. As they should, Howard agreed. Now, let's focus on the immediate situation. Major Jones, report on the ground operations at Helios Prime. A holographic communication link opened, showing a woman in mud-splattered combat armor. Behind her, Earth soldiers in powered exoskeletons worked to clear rubble from what had been a city center. Admiral, we've secured the 3 main population zones, Major Samantha Jones reported. Vordax ground forces have been pushed back to the northern continent. They're fighting to the last soldier as expected. Civilian casualties were heavy before our arrival, approximately 2 billion dead. A collective gasp came from the Alliance. Officers. The scope of the tragedy was difficult to comprehend. Survivors are being treated by our medical teams, Jones continued. We've established field hospitals in the secure zones. The Vordax used some kind of crystalline toxin in the water supply that our medics are still analyzing. Biological warfare, Commander Ward muttered. They've never used that before. They adapt, Howard said simply. As do we. Major, continue the operation as planned. We'll send additional support teams. The meeting continued for hours as they discussed strategy, shared intelligence, and began the difficult process of integrating 2 very different military cultures. Throughout the discussions, Peter observed the Earth officers. They were confident without being arrogant, precise in their assessments, and most strikingly, completely unsurprised by anything the Vordax had done. When the meeting finally ended, Peter found himself walking alongside Admiral Howard toward the ship's observation deck. You have questions, Captain Collins, she said. It wasn't a question. Peter nodded. Many, but one stands out. How did Earth become so prepared for war? The Alliance has worked for centuries to move beyond military conflict. We thought it was the natural evolution of advanced civilizations. Howard smiled faintly. A noble goal. But humanity's history taught us different lessons. They reached the observation deck, a vast chamber with transparent walls that offered a panoramic view of space. Helios Prime hung below them, beautiful despite the visible scars of battle on its surface. Earth has known war since our earliest civilizations, Howard explained. While your species were evolving toward cooperation, ours was locked in an endless cycle of conflict. We fought over resources, territory, ideology, religion, sometimes for reasons even we couldn't fully explain. She turned to face him directly. We tried peace many times. It never lasted. Eventually, we accepted that preparedness for war was the only certain path to survival. That sounds like a bleak existence, Peter observed. It would be, if that were the whole story, Howard agreed. But humans are complex. The same drive that makes us fearsome warriors also makes us passionate creators. The same ingenuity that builds weapons also builds wonders. We learn to channel our nature rather than deny it. Outside the viewport, Earth vessels worked alongside Alliance ships to create a defensive perimeter around the system. The two fleets were starkly different in design philosophy. Alliance ships were elegant and artistic, while Earth vessels were sleek and functional. The Alliance banned weapons development after the mechanical wars, Peter said. We chose peace. And we respect that choice, Howard replied. But the galaxy contains species like the Vordax who understand only strength. Sometimes, Captain, peace must be enforced before it can be enjoyed. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication. Admiral, we're detecting multiple jump signatures at the edge of the system. Vordax reinforcements. At least 500 vessels. Howard's expression didn't change. Inform all Earth and Alliance commanders. Battle stations. Captain Collins, would you care to observe how humanity wages war when we're properly prepared? Peter straightened his back. I would be honored, Admiral. As alarms sounded throughout the fleet, Peter realized that the galaxy had forever changed. The Vordax had believed they were invincible. The Alliance had believed warfare was behind them. Both had been wrong. And humanity, the species everyone had underestimated, was about to demonstrate why that had been a fatal mistake. The Vordax reinforcements emerged from jump points in perfect formation. 500 ships arranged in attack clusters, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the light of Helios Prime's sun. It was the largest Vordax fleet ever assembled in one location, a force that would have overwhelmed the entire Alliance Navy at full strength. On the bridge of the Invincible, Admiral Diane Howard studied the enemy formation with calm interest. Captain Peter Collins stood beside her, trying to hide his concern at the overwhelming numbers they faced. They've adapted their formation, Diane noted. They've placed their command vessels in the center rather than at the rear. They learned from our previous attack. Peter glanced at the tactical display. The combined Earth Alliance fleet numbered just over 200 ships. They were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Admiral, he began carefully, perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal. We could gather more forces. No, Diane said firmly. The Vordax must learn here and now that humanity will not retreat. She turned to her communications officer. Ben, open a channel to all Earth and Alliance vessels. When the channel was open, she spoke clearly and confidently. All ships, this is Admiral Howard. The enemy before us represents the largest Vordax force ever assembled. They expect us to retreat. They expect us to fear their numbers. They are about to learn why Earth has survived thousands of years of warfare. She nodded to her tactical officer. Kyle, initiate Operation Sunburst. Throughout the Earth fleet, hidden weapon systems came online. The vessels that had seemed merely impressive in the earlier battle now revealed their true capabilities. What's happening? Peter asked, watching as the Earthships began to emit a strange energy field. Phase 2, Diane replied. What you saw earlier was just our standard combat mode. This is what we reserved for a full-scale engagement. The Vordax launched. Their attack, hundreds of ships accelerating toward the Earth Alliance fleet, their weapons charged, preparing to unleash a devastating barrage. But before they could fire, the space between the two fleets shimmered. The stars themselves seemed to bend and distort. Fold space technology, Diane explained to Peter. We're creating a localized distortion in the fabric of space-time. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The front line of Vordax vessels suddenly found themselves moving at drastically reduced speeds, as if trapped in invisible molasses. Their weapons fire, when it finally came, moved so slowly that Earth fighters easily dodged the energy beams. We can't maintain the field for long, Diane continued. Energy costs are exponential, but we don't need long. She turned to her weapons officer. Frank, deploy graviton charges. From the Earth battleships came a new type of weapon. Small spherical devices that moved through the distorted space unaffected by the field. They attached themselves to the hulls of the slowed Vordax ships. Once in position, the devices activated. Localized gravity wells formed around each affected Vordax vessel, crushing their crystalline structures with forces equivalent to those found near a neutron star. Ships cracked and imploded one after another, turned into clouds of glittering dust by forces they had no defense against. In less than 5 minutes, a third of the Vordax fleet was destroyed. The space distortion field collapsed as Earth ships diverted power to their defensive systems. The remaining Vordax vessels, now free of the spatial effect, regrouped and changed tactics. Instead of a direct assault, they split into smaller attack groups, attempting to surround the Earth Alliance fleet. "They're adapting again," Kyle noted. "Impressive." Diane nodded. "As expected. Phase 3, Kyle." The Earth fleet suddenly split apart, individual vessels performing short-range jumps to create their own encirclement of the Vordax forces. From these positions they launched what appeared to be small satellites. The satellites activated, creating a web of energy beams between them. Where these beams intersected with Vordax ships, the crystalline material began to resonate at its atomic frequency. Entire vessels vibrated uncontrollably, their structures failing as the resonance shattered molecular bonds. Peter watched in astonishment as another 100 Vordax ships disintegrated. "You're not fighting with conventional weapons at all," he realized. "You're using the fundamental laws of physics as your weapons." "Conventional weapons are easy to defend against," Diane replied. "You build stronger shields, thicker armor, but the laws of physics apply to everyone equally. We simply found ways to use them more effectively." The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. Earth's technologies were so far beyond what the Vordax had encountered that they had no effective countermeasures. When the last enemy vessel was disabled, Admiral Howard ordered an immediate rescue operation to capture Vordax crew members alive. "We need intelligence," she explained to Peter, "and we need to understand their psychology if we're ever going to end this war permanently." 3 days later, representatives from all Alliance worlds gathered in the central chamber of the Helios, Prime Capital City. The building had been quickly repaired by Earth engineering teams, its grand dome now a symbol of resilience and cooperation. President Laura Garcia of Earth addressed the gathering via holographic projection. Her image stood in the center of the chamber, lifelike and commanding despite being transmitted from millions of kilometers away. "For too long, Earth watched from the shadows as the galaxy changed around us," she began. "We chose isolation while we built our strength, unsure if we would find friends or enemies among the stars." She looked around at the gathered delegates, making eye contact with each as if she were truly present. "Today, that isolation ends. Earth extends its hand in friendship to the Alliance, offering not just our military protection but our scientific knowledge, our cultural diversity, and our unique perspective." Alliance High Counselor Eli Ward stepped forward. The elderly diplomat had spent decades shaping Alliance policy, including the non-interference directive that had kept Earth isolated. "President Garcia," he said formally, "the Alliance acknowledges and thanks Earth for its intervention at Helios Prime. Without your fleet, this system and perhaps our entire civilization would have fallen to the Vordax." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "However, I must ask, why should we trust a species that deceived us for 70 years? A species whose first major interaction with the galactic community was an act of war, however justified?" Laura Garcia smiled gently. "Because, Counselor, we could have let you fall. We could have waited until the Alliance was gone, then dealt with the Vordax on our terms. Instead, we chose to save billions of lives at the risk of exposing ourselves before we were ready." She gestured to the rebuilt chamber around them. "We choose to build rather than destroy. We choose to heal rather than harm. Yes, humanity excels at warfare. Our history forced that excellence upon us. But our true strength lies in what we do after the fighting stops." Throughout the gathered delegates, a murmur of agreement spread. Even Ward seemed moved by her words. "The Alliance accepts Earth's friendship," he declared formally. "Together, we will rebuild what the Vordax destroyed and create a new era of peace." one protected by strength rather than wishful thinking. As the meeting continued, Captain Peter Collins stood with Admiral Howard and Ambassador Martinez at the back of the chamber. "Will it work?" Peter asked quietly. "This alliance between such different approaches to the galaxy?" Diane Howard looked at the delegates, now engaged in animated discussions about joint defense systems and technology exchanges. "It has to work," she said. "The Vordax are just the beginning. There are other threats in the darkness between stars, threats neither of us could face alone." Linda Martinez smiled. "Humanity learned long ago that our greatest achievements come not despite our differences, but because of them. The Alliance brings wisdom, patience, and a vision of peace. Earth brings innovation, determination, and the will to defend that peace at any cost." She looked out through the dome at the stars above, where Earth and Alliance ships patrolled together. "No one was supposed to come when the Vordax attacked," she said softly. "But humanity did. And now, neither of us will ever stand alone again."